guys, what's going on? It is Ash here coming at you today talking about the problem with bowlers. So bowlers have been the troop on everybody's mind. Before I get into that, let me first apologize for not coming out with 2 videos a day the last day or 2. I've been through a lot. My poor little dog Sheldon, everybody meet Sheldon. He's really the love of my life. I never thought I'd be one of those dog owners to really have that kind of a bond, almost like a father-son bond with their dog, but I certainly do with little Sheldon. He's a manly chocolate toy poodle, but he ate something very toxic last night, and I spent the entire night at the vet, so wasn't able to come out with 2 videos. But anyway, back to the subject at hand. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the problem with bowlers. Now, I know some of you right now are doing a collective eye roll. Another YouTuber out there having a problem with a troop that most of us haven't even maxed out yet, and he's gonna call for a nerf, and Supercell's gonna nerf the troop as soon as I get it maxed out. Greedy Supercell, right? No, to the contrary, I'm actually not calling for a bowler nerf today in today's video. However, I do want to bring up a problem that I have with the bowler attacks. So bowler attacks have absolutely taken over the game, both at Town Hall 10 now we're starting to see them, and certainly at Town Hall 11. I'm going to follow this replay up with a 3-star using level 1 bowlers against a 100% maxed out base. I actually shared it previously, but it warrants a re-examination because of how much of a strong attack it is. So let's rewind a little bit before we get to the crux of my argument. So there's really 2 camps of players out there. There's the more super competitive players who, maybe gem the updates or farm them really hardcore right when they come out. They're usually maxed out, and this group primarily doesn't like bowlers. I say primarily, and there are plenty of exceptions, but the reason being is because this group of players, they like intricate, planned 2 or 3 phase attacks with kill squads, etc., etc., right? And then the other camp of people tend to be a little bit more casual, or folks who don't play super often. They don't gem, they don't max out their troops as soon as they come out. Maybe they're even Town Hall 8 or 9, and they're just anticipating someday being a maxed out player. So there's 2 camps of people. The second camp, they generally like having more 3-star options for the layman. People who don't have time to plan for 5 or 6 hours or use burner accounts for 5 or 6 hours to crack a base, like having an option that they can go in, attack the base, and have a decent shot if all goes well at 3 stars. So those are the 2 camps of players, and I totally empathize with both groups. Because let's face it, on one hand, the mass bowler spam attack doesn't require a lot of planning. It's certainly not a 2 or 3 phase attack that requires, really intricate, knowledgeable base breakdown and planning to go in against a base. At the worst scenario against these anti-3-star bases, you're going to get 2 stars. Best case, you have a decent shot at 3 stars. Okay, so before I roll out what the problem is, I should mention a huge caveat to this entire discussion, and that is that bases are starting to change. You're starting to see a lot of changes in anti-3-star bases both at Town Hall 10 and Town Hall 11. Namely, they're starting to spread out the Inferno Towers more and even triangulate the Inferno Towers and the Eagle Artillery in 3 separate areas of the base. That way the mass bowlers can't get at one of those targets just by simply spamming them in the same entry point on a map. So that's kind of the direction the anti-3-star bases are going. I can bring you some examples of those in the future if you want to, but as always, defense kind of lags behind offense. So whatever the offensive trend is, it does take a few weeks, a couple months maybe, for bases to catch up to prevent these type of spam attacks. Same thing happened with witches, same thing happened with Valkyries, and it's now happening with bowlers. That's another reason that I don't think nerfing them is necessarily the correct move. Okay, finally, let's move on to what the problem is, and now on the next replay, you're gonna start seeing it, right? So I love air attacks, and I think that air attacks in a perfect world scenario should make up about 50% of the attacks in the game. Now, is it ever going to equal exactly 50%? And let's face it, there's less air troops than there are ground troops, so maybe even 25% air attacks would be nice to see. Right now, we're seeing pretty much zero in the fair play community, right? So I'm not seeing too many Penta LaLoon attacks in wars. Actually, I'm not seeing any Penta LaLoon attacks against max bases like this, or not even like this, but against any type of decent anti-3-star base design. And I love these types of attacks. Now, these are attacks that require planning and execution and those intricate, elements that I talked about earlier. This is an attack with clone spell, and that's going to lead me to another point as well. But you can see these are really fun when done well, when planned out well. They can actually be successful. But the real problem is that the air attacks, let's just throw a number out there, an air attack will be a Penta LaLoon at Town Hall 10, for example, or Town Hall 11, probably has maybe a 50% chance of getting a 3-star at best, maybe 25% chance, maybe 33% chance, and even worse, if things go wrong in an air attack, you have a decent shot at only coming away with 1 star, whereas a bowler attack, on the other hand, a mass bowler attack against a similar anti-3-star base, you're going to be a 2-star in that base at around a 75 to 85% clip, and you're going to be 3-starring that base at least 50% of the time if you have a general awareness of a decent mass bowler spam attack strategy. Maybe even northwards of 2/3 of the time getting a 3-star attack. So that's the crux of my argument about what's wrong with bowlers, right? And it's kind of similar to what was wrong with Valkyries. They're so strong that they're keeping all the other awesome strategies down. And it's not just air attacks that I'm talking about here. It's actually even the usage of miners and the usage of the clone spell, right? These are two things that we're not seeing that much of. I mean, sure, people are using miners, but at this point, it seems like almost a novelty. They're certainly effective, don't get me wrong. Very effective troop. I love miners. I really do like them a lot, and I think they're appropriately powerful in terms of their strength and usage. But the same thing goes for miners that goes for the air attacks, the Penta LaLoon, any kind of LaLoon attack at Town Hall 10 or 11. They're just not as effective as bowlers. So when you have one strategy that is so much more successful than all the other attack strategies out there, it creates a vacuum where that one strategy dominates the game. Now, is that a big issue? That's the real question here. So is that even a problem, Ash? I mean, maybe there's always going to be one strategy that dominates the game. Isn't that how games go? Isn't there always one strategy that's kind of the best out there? I don't know. That might be true. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I'm not going to try to be so wonky to say that this is exactly how every game needs to be in terms of balance. But in my perfect world scenario, I mean, they added the level 4 Lava Hounds. They added the level 7 Balloons. I was really excited about this. I thought for the first time in a long time, air would actually be a viable attack strategy again. But alas, bowlers are so dominant that, again, they're kind of overshadowing air attacks. So what is the solution? Or at least what would my solution be? Well, it's a great question and it's a very tough answer. I'm sure you all have your own opinions on what it would be. Me personally, here's what I would do. I would not go ahead and nerf bowlers. Instead, I would just make a couple of slight buffs to other troops. Now, when I say slight buffs, I mean really slight, because let's face it, again, like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, bases are changing right now. People are adjusting to the bowler attacks, so we don't want to overreact if we're Supercell, but at the same time, we want to be cognizant of the fact that the bowlers are boxing out every other troop in the game. So my own recommendations to the Supercell team for Clash of Clans would be to go ahead and add a slight buff to the witches. That way it gives another option for the ground game at Town Hall 11. And then I would go ahead and give a buff to level 6 and level 7 balloons, a slight buff that will dramatically increase the viability of air. And then I would buff level 4 Lava Hounds as well. Again, a slight buff to the Hounds and maybe even the pups. That way it brings air a little bit back in line with the bowler attacks, and of course all offense will be a little bit stronger, but it's easy to go ahead and add those defensive levels in the future if you want to further balance the game. So guys, interested to hear your thoughts on everything. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and as always, take care, guys.
We don't play for fame, we don't play for cash. just play